Welcome back to the interview series. I'm sitting here with Mark J. Silverman, and this is part 2. We're going into deeper just conversation with you and your leadership skills as an executive coach. You help people perform at their highest level and help them grow their businesses, but also grow their relationships and have better relationships. So I'm going to jump right into it, Mark. And the first question is, can you share an example of a time when you had to navigate a difficult team dynamic and what strategies you did to address the issue?
Oh, good question. So I had 2 guys who were on the leadership team who were actually good friends. They came up together. They had a great relationship. And then one day, one of the guys was really cold to the other one. And so my guy who I was coaching, he said, I wrote a note to someone questioning a decision that he made. And I was really pretty forward about it. And I think he read it.
Huh.
And he says, I don't know he read it, so what do I do? And I said, well, you need to talk to him about it. He goes, well, what if he didn't read it? I'm just opening up a can of worms. I said, did you write something critical of him and not talk to him directly? Yes. Great. You need to speak to him. But I don't want to make a big deal out of something again, no, you have to have that conversation. So you have to, he says, okay, so I'm going to tell him that I didn't really mean it, that everything that I wrote. And I said, that's bullshit. You'll know you're lying because you wrote it in private.
Tell the truth.
That's what you
Yeah.
thought. So he got to, oh, this was a lap in my leadership. This was me not supporting you. I said that, and I should have said this to you directly, and I'm sorry. He went and did that. The guy had read the note. They talked about it. It was a little cool for about a day, 2. Then they went out for beers, and now their relationship is actually stronger than it was before because of the honesty, because of that vulnerability. But it took everything that poor guy had to go and say, I did this thing. And I told him, I did the same thing once. I had, we had about 25 people on an email for this deal that we were doing, and someone just shot it down really badly. And this guy had kind of a rude temperament. So I wrote back, and I was going to write back to just my engineer. And I wrote, so-and-so has no human relationship skills, right? Or something even worse. But I replied all.
Oh.
So the whole company saw me just trash this guy. And I went, as soon as I hit reply all, picked up the phone, called him, and I said, I just said this. It's how I feel. It's what I think. And I'm sorry. And he goes, it's fair. You're not wrong.
The whole company knows.
And we had a great relationship. He just didn't care that he was an asshole. But that was I related that story to my client, so he knew that he needed to clear the air.
It reminded me of a reply all experience I had years ago when I worked at corporate. But I felt better after doing it. Next question. How do you stay grounded and present when faced with overwhelming stress and pressure as an executive?
Oh, as an executive, I thought you were asking me how I do it.
Well, actually, I want to hear it from you, and then I want to hear both sides.
So what I do and what I have executives do are exactly the same thing. You cannot be grounded and centered in the moment if you haven't practiced. You can't lift 300 pounds if you haven't been working up to it, right? So if you want to be able to be okay when you're triggered or have your trigger lessen, you have to do your work beforehand. Right? So you have to do the meditation. You have to do the exercise. You have to get that allostatic load that we talked about on part 1, that level of stress and down. So you need the muscles to be able to breathe through anything that comes at you. So for me, I can now be on stage, have something go really wrong and not start sweating and not lose it, but still be tense inside. right? And not have it show on the outside. But that's practice. So before any trigger, anything happens, you have to do your work beforehand. Then once you have that practice, then you know how to breathe. You breathe from your belly. You get that air going through. You pause. You reflective listen, right? Again, saying what I heard you say gives you time to get yourself right. I have one client who, sometimes I take the pen, they behave badly, and then I turn them into milk toast. I turn them into wet noodles. And then they come back and they're like, I don't like being a wet noodle. I'm like, yes, great. Now that you know how to do both, now we can regulate. So there's one client said, I feel inauthentic in meetings. I'm getting angry, and people know it. I said, great. What we want to do is we don't want your anger to go at the person, because if you're angry at about a 3 or a 4, it's often the thing. You're just pissed off about what's going on or frustrated. If you're at an 8 or a 7, 8, or a 9, it's something else completely. It's all yours, right? So you have to deal with yourself. But for this guy, what I said is you have to be able to deflect the anger. So if you're angry at an 8 and you want to be authentic, you can say, I'm angry. I'm frustrated over the situation. You did nothing wrong, or what you did wrong is not warranted for my emotion. Now you've taken the anger, it's come out, but it's come out over here, to the left or right instead of directly at the person, so that they're not burdened with your emotional baggage. Does that make sense? So you can speak it up, but make sure that the person is safe from your emotional outburst.
That's good. In your experience, what are the most common barriers that prevent leaders from effectively delegating tasks to their team members?
Okay. Again, it's the hero complex. It's, I'm the only one who can do it. I'm the only one who can do it right. The other excuse I get all the time is it's just easier to do it myself. I can do it myself just as fast as I can delegate it. Our mutual friend, Jefferson K. Rogers, who I interviewed on the Rising Leader podcast, and that was
a great episode.
He spoke at Rise and Record, and when he was on stage at Rise and Record, and I asked him about it on the podcast, he basically said, I had to learn that if someone can do something at 80% or 70% of the way I can do it, if I have 5 people doing things at 70 or 80% of what I can do,
than one.
Now I have leverage and I can coach them up.
So good level, right there. Right? That's gold.
Right. So that was good. So that's one. The other one I get all the time is my team is too busy. My team is too busy. And that I have to confront that one because sometimes they are. So now the question is, do you need more resources? Do you have too much workload? Right? There's something wrong with the system. If your people are just constantly so overwhelmed that you can't even delegate to them, we have to look at other parts of the system. And sometimes it's you'll stay up until 3 o'clock in the morning, but you won't ask your people to stay up later. Do you want to give them the opportunity to step up, to show what they're capable of, and create new leaders in that realm? So there's always a dynamic in there. There's always a million different reasons why you wouldn't delegate.
Wow, that really struck. I want to restate what you just said there from the Jefferson thing. I can do it better when they say I can do it better, 100%. But if you can get 5 people to do it at 80%, you're leveraging and getting way more output.
Right.
That's good. How can leaders strike a balance between maintaining a clear vision and adapting to changing circumstances and feedback? I'll say it again. How can leaders strike a balance between maintaining a clear vision and adapting to changing circumstances and feedback?
Again, there's short-term vision and there's long-term vision. You may have a long-term goal, and the setbacks and the things that come are just the turbulence on your way to your long-term vision. So you can constantly keep things focused on that long term, so that the long term vision is the point where you're making corrections for these things that are going wrong. If it's short term, the question is so funny. I was just doing a 360 on a new client, and the criticism was he's a dog on a bone. If everybody comes to him with why this isn't going to work, he digs in deeper, and he'll take something completely over the edge. Right, because he can't, because he can't let go.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you? So if it's a short term thing, and the indicators are this isn't the right goal, can you listen to your team and adjust there? So that's a piece that's just, again, internal work. Is how can I stay curious as to what might be better than what we originally had in mind?
That's good. Can you discuss a time when you had to make a difficult decision and how you weighed the pros and cons to arrive at a resolution? Give me one specific example.
One is if it's a really difficult decision and it's consequential, I have a posse. I have my own board of directors. Mm-hmm. I have a posse of people who I trust, want what's best for me, who know me. So I will poll my audience, but I'm very careful of who I ask advice from. So I have those people who I trust, to make those decisions and to actually collectively make a better decision than I do. Mm-hmm. The next is I have developed a relationship with my gut instinct, with my
so
intuition,
powerful.
Right?
Listen to your gut.
So that slowing down, I'm a big believer in journaling. If I have a big decision to make, I'll do something that's called morning pages. And that's from Julia Cameron. It's a book called The Artist's Way back in the 90s. And it's basically writing for 20 minutes, stream of consciousness. I'll put that topic at the top of a page and write about it for 3 pages, for 20 minutes. And something that I'd never even thought of comes out of in that thing to help me make that decision.
Journaling has been so powerful for me too. Do you ever go back to your thoughts of what you said years ago?
Yes. And what's really scary is some of the things I was dealing with 15 years ago, 10 years ago are still in my journal today. It's like Groundhog's Day, even though I am dedicated to self-growth and I spend all my money, all my resources, all my time, trying to change. I've dealt with some of the same things from way back when, so I don't really like going back.
I got a black book that's 10 years of writing. And some of it I look in there, I'm like, I should probably burn this. If somebody read this, they would think I'm fucking nuts.
That's why when I journal, so when I do morning pages, I don't do it in a journal. I do it on loose paper. Mm-hmm. So that I don't censor myself, because I'm known as this love guy, right? Like all this, and I'm like, I fucking hate this and I hate that, and I want to get that poison out because it's honest, it's real, it's human, and then I want to rip it up. And then what I do is I take whatever gold is in that writing, I put that into a journal.
I've actually had, this is just thinking out loud here, I remember being in my apartment and screaming out loud and cussing and saying out loud about all the things that I'm dealing with and struggling with, and saying, Brandon, you need to get this out. You need to figure this out. But now I think back, I'm like, the people down the hall probably thought I was a schizophrenic or something. But it helped. I got it out. I shared it. That was an interesting time.
Never underestimate the power of a big scream in your basement.
Oh my!
Never underestimate, because it's energy, right?
Energy.
You want to move that energy. You never want to push down or suppress it. You want to keep it moving, so that, because it's emotion. It's a thing.
In your opinion, what are some of the most important qualities that leaders should cultivate to foster a high performing team?
Honesty and trust is first. So, you have to have trust. People have to know they have each other's backs. They have to know that. The other thing is fostering that the leadership team is a team. So one of the challenges that I run into a lot is fiefdoms.
Say that again.
Fiefdoms. So like little kingdoms within the organization. So my team is the sales team. My team is the accounting team. Right? These are my teams, and forgetting that they're on the leadership team and represent the company to these people. So you have to be able to straddle both, and your center of gravity has to be on the senior leadership team. For the people that I work with, you represent the company, you represent the CEO, you represent the customers, and you're an advocate, and you're a coach, and you're a leader for your team, right? So it's like 51% you're on the leadership team, 49% you're part of your team, trying to move that center of gravity. But that's the culture of the leadership team. So once they feel like they have their back, once they feel that co-opetition. Because if you're on a senior leadership team, you're probably ambitious, right? You're probably motivated. You probably want your idea. You think your ideas are the best, right? So you want to be able to do that while fostering that trust in that relationship. Then after that trust and relationship, then you can work on performance. Then you can work on accountability, right? You can work on commitment, but you have to have that trust first.
How can leaders effectively communicate with team members who have different communication styles or cultural backgrounds?
First is they have to want to. The how-to is not hard. The how-to for anything, again, the great Steve Chandler says, the answer to how is yes. In other words, there's a YouTube video for everything. You just have to be willing to do what you need to do, be who you need to be. Are you willing to be that person? So you have to decide you want to talk to someone who has a different communication style. Now you can do a personality test. You can do all kinds of things. You can ask someone their love language. You can ask them their business love language. I was interviewing Kevin Haverty, who is the trusted advisor to the CEO of ServiceNow, which is one of the biggest SaaS companies in the world. And he was saying that if he has an email that's more than 2 paragraphs long, he sends it back. He doesn't have 20 minutes to read someone's dissertation on something. So he's actually communicated to his people how to communicate with me, right? Now, if he has people on his team and he's done the personality test and he understands how they receive information, now it's his job, because again, communication the responsibility of the communication is with you, that it gets heard. So if you want your communication heard, you have to figure out how someone hears it.
Actually, my publisher actually has in their email signature, it says, I will keep my emails to 5 lines or less. And I suggest you do. I don't know how it was worded, but it's a great example. And you think about it, like, how can I answer this email or communicate in 5 lines versus writing a book? Because when I get a book, sometimes I'm just like, okay, I'll look at it later, and then I don't look at it, which is way too long.
Right. One example of like communication is if I asked you, when do you have to be at the dentist? What time is your dentist appointment? You might answer, well, let's see. I have to get up, get the kids to work, get the kids to school. I have to do this, I have to do that. And then 1:30, where I'll be 1:30, right? Like it's just, again, you've got to learn what someone's style is.
Yeah, some people just want to the point too, or some people want more of a kind of communication through it.
One of the best things I did with my ex-wife is when she calls me with a problem. Like I wish I could have done this during our marriage. When she calls me with a problem, when she calls me with something on the phone, I'll say, am I just listening? Am I agreeing? Like, am I going, yeah, girl, you're right? Or am I helping you to solve something? Which person would you like me to be? And that has changed it. She says, I just need you to listen. I'm venting. Great. I just need you to tell me I'm doing great. Great. Thanks. I need you to solve this. My favorite.
I like that. Women like to just be acknowledged and listened to as well.
Yes.
One tip, listen to the women. And yes, acknowledge. You don't have to say anything. Just listen. We're going back to emotional intelligence. So in the past interview, we talked about emotional intelligence. And my question for you is, can you share a personal experience of overcoming a challenge related to your emotional intelligence as a leader and how you grew from the experience?
So I just did a keynote speech from a hotel room. It was a virtual speech. You know this story. So I was driving to a couple of speaking engagements, and I said I could do this from my hotel room. So I brought my nice camera setup. I brought my portable lights. I got a suite, at the lovely Hampton Inn in Media, Pennsylvania. And I set everything up beautifully. I paid for the extra internet, so I had good internet to do this keynote. So everything looked great. Everything was great. And I started, and by the way, the person who asked me to speak was a mentor of mine from way back. So I just wanted to do a good job for his startup. And I wanted, his CEO was going to be in the room. And it was really important to me to show up for this guy. And I start my presentation. And 5 minutes into my presentation, I hear, Mark, are you talking? We can't hear you. The internet had gone out in the hotel. Like the entire, but I didn't know it was the whole entire hotel. I just thought it was my room. Did I not pay for the day? Whatever. So I'm calling the front desk. So I'm like, so what I know is breathe. I'm safe. Right? So that's the emotional intelligence that I've learned is no matter what's happening around me, I'm safe. And it's because of all the pre-work I do. Okay, I'll figure this out. So Navy SEAL Team 6, work the problem, right? So the front desk was absolutely no help. So I'm like, I'll do Zoom on my phone. I don't need all the fancy lights and all that stuff. I have one bar. So I'm trying to go and Zoom, no Zoom, right? Nothing. So finally he texts me and he says, just dial in. We'll put you over speaker. So I did the entire presentation, entire 45-minute presentation on the phone, pacing in the
Wow.
room, and got kudos from the CEO. Got tons of questions. Had no feedback, right? So I couldn't see anybody, couldn't hear anybody. So
That's
no
hard.
feedback.
It's not easy as a speaker.
And it was afterwards that I realized how much work I had done. One, just again, speaking over and over and over again, so being able to handle adversity, but also in my own self-soothing so that I could be grounded and centered and work the problem, call the front desk, fix this, try this, reboot the computer. And afterwards, letting go, the big thing for me was letting go how it was supposed to be. So I was so excited that I had set everything up to look so good for this team of people. It was so professional from a hotel room. I had to let go of that. Right? That was hard. Like, all right, it's just a phone thing.
Going back to you prepared yourself from the reps, from putting in the work to knowing your information so well that you just made pivots, made changes, and you performed at a high level. Which I think of that story and be like, oh, I'm getting paid money, speaking to a group, and then all of a sudden the internet goes out, and then what do? I had slides, I had videos, and now I got to completely change how I communicate the message. But I believe everything happens for you, not against you. So how can you learn, and how can you use that and turn it into a great opportunity?
Yeah, I've had other presentations where I'm doing a workshop where my slides are like imperative to the workshop.
Yeah.
And the whole thing just shits the bed. And now you have to do interpretive dance. Like now you have to figure
a whole other style, yeah.
And to be able to just show up and go, all right, so we don't have this, we're going to do it this way. Is really it's an interesting thing.
So we're going to go back to the question, what is success? And because I just love how different people look at success, how they achieve their own version of success. But what advice would you give someone who is struggling to define their version of success or feels like they're chasing someone else's definition of success?
So this is again the internal work that's hard to get people to do. So journaling is huge. But what to journal, right? And the question I would ask is, what do I care about? What actually do I care about in the world? What makes me mad? What makes me happy? The other thing I would say, what lights me up? What makes me die inside? And I'm not saying that you just go do the thing that, follow your bliss, that kind of thing. It's funny because Joseph Campbell, people like to talk about Joseph Campbell and follow your bliss. What they don't realize is Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss and then work your ass off for your bliss, right? But, like what lights you up and what crushes your soul? Because you don't want to go do, like if your parents told you have to be this and it's crushing your soul, you're going to find a way out. You're going to get sick. You're going to blow the career. Like midlife is brutal, and it'll figure out a way to get you on the right path. It'll shout at you and tell you you're on the wrong path. And if you don't listen, it just shouts louder and louder and gets harsher and harsher. So being able to know who you are for me, and that was really hard for me because I remember when I was depressed, when I was getting divorced and I was depressed and suicidal, I was trying to figure out what do I have to live for? And I realized I only cared about three things. I liked the color blue, I liked the Judds, and I liked chocolate chip cookies. Those were the only three things. That's where I started. What do I like? What do I care about? And it was the color blue, the Judds, and chocolate chip cookies. So I started there. And I bought a couple of blue things and put them in my house. And slowly I started to figure out what it is I cared about, what it is I wanted to do. Alan Cohen, the guy who talked me into being a coach way back when, he has this really kind of new agey, silly thing. He says, I want you to put sticky notes all around your house that says, my spirit is calling me to blank. Mm-hmm. And when he first gave me that exercise, I was like, what the? And I put them all over my house and I'm like, my spirit is calling me to eat sugar. My spirit is calling me to watch porn. My spirit is like, I couldn't even figure out like all my addictions, like were they, like, what does spirit want me to do? And it took about 3-4 days. And finally it just came to me. My spirit is calling me to connect. And I was a sales guy at that time. I wasn't a coach. I wasn't into any of it. And I'm like, what does that mean? So I did a coaching call with him afterwards. I said, so I did your exercise. And my spirit is calling me to connect. And remember, I'm a sales guy, and my sales career is crushing me. Right? It's too relentless for me. It's not what I want to be doing. And when I realized I want to connect, I brought that into my sales. Right? So the reason I was successful at sales is because people connect with me. People trust me. Right? So I built these relationships. So I stopped being a salesman and I started being a person who connects. And that made what I was doing what it is my soul wanted until I could move into what it is I should be doing.
Wow, that's really good. How can leaders bring healthy leadership principles into their personal relationships, such as with their family members or romantic partners?
Okay, so we talked about honesty, forthrightness, right? So being honest, being willing to have the difficult conversations, curiosity. So I learned a coaching technique called circling, and in circling, it's about getting another person's world 100%, as much as like understanding what's going on over there. If you're in a romantic relationship, or if you're in your family, I want you to do that at work. I want you to do that even more at home. Understand who you're with, what's going on in their world. They live in a completely different world than you do. You and I live in completely different worlds that just seem to connect in certain places. We have different perspectives, different experiences, all that stuff. So honesty, curiosity, and learn to connect, and then being willing to be vulnerable.
That's good. So now I want to go into some more personal questions about your story, but also just curiosity that I have. So we'll end on some good stuff here. Well, that was really good stuff, but now I'm going to kind of go deeper into you. And so I want to start. You have an amazing story how you went from homeless, living out of your vehicle, to millionaire. And from literally one side of the world to a whole different kind of part of your life. Can you give us a glimpse of when you were homeless, when you were at your lowest moment? What did your life look like? What were some things going through your head? And what were the things that went through your head that gave you that kind of slow initiative towards that, let's say, $1 million status or becoming that high achieving leader? Paint that picture for us.
Now, you just asked that in a different way than I've been asked before, so it made me think a little bit differently. So when I was homeless, I had just left this community of people. I was kind of in a cult, and they threw me out. So I wasn't even good enough for the cult. And I was living in my truck, and I was trying to borrow some money from my brother who lived in Washington, D.C. And back then, you didn't have Venmo. This was 1989. And so you had to find a Western Union, which was a place where you could wire money to, and you had to go to that specific place to get the money. And I had all my credit cards were maxed out. I had a little red pickup truck. I had a guitar I didn't know how to play, a camera I didn't know how to use. And that was all I had in my truck, and some clothes. And I had a Unicall 76 card, which was a gas station. And it was the only card that had any credit on it. So I would get gas and food at Unicall 76 stations. And I was driving around, and my brother said, come to DC. And I was in Portland. I ended up in Portland because there was a girl who I waited tables with in Albuquerque who said she was moving to Portland. And I had decided I wanted to go see her because I was head over heels in love with her. Mm-hmm. And like, that's how sane I was. I'm like, I'm homeless. I'm going to go to Portland and see this girl who I don't even know where she is. And you can't find these things, like there's no social media at that point. My brother convinced me to come to DC. So I drove across country to DC, and I landed here. I was 130 pounds when I landed here. And my brother was in AA and NA, and he said, you're going to stay here. You'll stay with me. You'll get a job. You'll enroll in school. You'll go to the gym with me, and you'll go to NA and AA. So I just went because it was free meals, and I didn't really think of myself as that. It was only after a few months realizing I can't drink. Like I can't drink and do drugs.
So you stopped cold turkey.
I stopped, and I knew that if I took a drink, it was all over. I didn't know that. I didn't know if I was an alcoholic. I knew if I took a drink, I was screwed. And the whole time I was driving around, I would not drink. I kept thinking about it, and I'm like, if you drink, this is all over. So I got here, and I did all that, and I enrolled in college. I started waiting tables at the Four Seasons and did all that. Wound up getting married, and I got my first sales job. And when I asked my ex-wife to marry me back then, I said, I may never be more than a waiter. I may never be anything more than a waiter. I'm 28 years old, 29. No, I was 30, I guess, at the time. I said, I have no skills. I have no college education or anything like that. So I don't know that I'll ever be anything. And she came from a well-to-do family. She was she had a graduate degree, and she had a master's. And then I got a job as a sales guy. Now that was hard because I'm an introvert. Mm-hmm. I don't like to bother people. But I took this test that said I should either be a lawyer, a writer, or a salesperson. And I was not going to be a lawyer because it took me 12 years to get my undergraduate degree. I couldn't write. I have I'm a writer now. I'm a best-selling author. Who knew? But then I was like, I'm not going to be a writer. So I took a job as a sales guy. And I remember taking a job as a copy salesman. Mm-hmm.
A copy salesman.
Selling copiers. And back then you didn't have a printer. You didn't have a printer that could do it all. You had to have like this big machine, and you would go knock on office doors to sell copiers. So I go out on a trial run with a sales guy, and I come back, and the sales manager says to me, Silverman, you're a really nice guy. Don't go into sales. Mm-hmm. I was like, thanks. I wound up taking a sales job, and it took me a few months, and I wound up being really successful. I was selling computer training, and I started to get successful at it. And then I saw a piece of equipment in a trade show. That was the most fascinating thing. It was called a smartboard. So you write on a whiteboard, and it downloads to the computer. I thought that was the coolest thing you ever saw in your life. And then you could put a projector on it, and you could you can play solitaire and move cards and things like that. I'm like, I could sell that shit. That's the most exciting thing I've ever seen in my life. I can sell that shit. So I talked myself into a job selling that. And somehow I sold two of the biggest deals to the Marine Corps that this company had ever had. So I doubled my income. So I made $26,000 a year. Then I made $50,000 a year. Then I made $125,000 a year. Then $250,000. Then a friend of mine worked in a tech company, and he said, "You don't even know how to sell. Like, come here, we'll train you how to sell." So I went and worked for this tech company, doubled my income again. So now I went from homeless to waiter to making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, like $500,000 a year. And living in $1 million house, driving a Lexus, that kind of thing. So that juxtaposition was an interesting one.
What, when you said you didn't know sales, but then you went and they taught you sales, like what are a couple things that stood out to you that you learned in sales that allowed you to become really good at selling, even at a higher level?
So I'm really good at relationship. People trust me. People want to do things for me. People, so I know how to do that. I know how to support people. I now know that being an executive coach is also the same skills of being a sales guy, because I wanted my customers to be successful with whatever they did. So I did whatever I could to help them get successful, whether it was with the technology I sold or in their careers, because I was having meetings with the CEO and the CIO, so I could be advocates for them. So I did that kind of thing. But what I didn't know how to do was to dismantle my competitors. Mm-hmm. I didn't know how to ask for the sale. I didn't know how to give, then ask. Right? I didn't know how to do those things. I didn't know how to specifically ask the questions needed to be asked of what's really important for the sale, right? Because what people say is important isn't what's really important. When you find out what's really important, then you can get the sale. So I didn't know that. And I didn't have the competitive fire at first. Once I started making money, then I had the competitive fire. I liked seeing my name on the leaderboard.
You got
that was a new thing for me, to see my name on the leaderboard. I like that.
That's awesome.
I liked every year getting awards. I liked being taken to the Four Seasons in Hawaii or Whistler or something like that for those club trips and stuff like that. I like that.
One thing, to go back in your story, going from selling copy machines to selling the projector system, I mean, I don't think you really believed in, you got to believe in what you're selling. When you said you lit up about this new thing you were selling, like people can see that and people buy into that. It's so different. We talked about our mutual friend, Joan Allen, who he does art. And like when he talks about the art or he talks about surfing or anything, he's so passionate about it. And that passion almost helps change your buying perspective. And so that is a big thing in sales, is you got to believe in the product, but also you got to know what it can do for the other person.
I was really successful in tech sales because I went from startup to startup. When I worked for a startup that I thought was going to change the world, I made so much money. When I worked for a startup that was like, meh, you just had like same shit, different shovel, I couldn't sell. I had to be so invested.
So in your journey, can you think of 2 or 3 people that made such a big impact on your life, whether mentors, coaches, or whoever that may be, and what was it that they said or did that had such an impact on your life? Pick 2 or 3 people that come to mind.
So the first one is Tom Mendoza. Tom Mendoza was the president of Network Appliance, or NetApp now, and he was the first person who actually just talked to me and talked about me as if I was a big deal. My first interview ever was after I made a huge sale. He did it, the interviews used to go out on CDs, but he did an interview over the phone with me about the sale and about the success and how I did that, and treated me in a fashion that I had never been treated before. That was just killer for me. So believing in me was like, again, where I came from, I didn't believe in myself. So him believing in me. There's another guy named Greg Collins. And Greg isn't like as famous as Tom, but Greg was just a sales guy at the same company. And him and Mike O'Donnell, these two guys are gruff. They both drove matching Mercedes, and were just unbelievably. They would do cold calls and drink Coronas and things like that. They had black lights in their office and smoke machines. They were those kinds of guys.
I love that.
They were just a blast. Complete opposite of shy little me. And those 2 guys decided that I was one of them, and they believed in me. And Greg Collins to this day would say to people, "This is the best sales guy I've ever met." I'd be like, "What are you talking about?" But having people who were that consequential believe in me, you can make me tear up, gave me what I didn't have back then, right? Like now I know who I am. But that's with our relationship also, right? I know who you hang with. I know what you do in the world. And the fact that you believe in me, you're 33 years old, I'm 60, and that you are so invested in what I'm bringing to the world, that gives me fuel to even go even further, right? So for me, the people in my life who have believed in me when I've had that gap, because I've told people, I've never had any self-esteem. I've never had any confidence. I've done everything I've done without those things. I've just stopped waiting for them to come and done all these things. So having people in my life who believed, I remember way back when I was in the cult, the woman said, "Do you want to?" She would say, "Do you want your head to be right? Do you want your ego to be right, or do you want me to be right about how wonderful I am?" And I'm like, so I make the people in my life right about me rather than the trash in my head. And a lot of my success came from there. I don't have that same trash now, but it was essential to me to have people believe in me.
It's funny, we've been through the same cult system.
Yeah.
We've had similar experiences. Going to, obviously, it's powerful. People believe in you, having the right people around you. What are 3 of the best investments you've made in your life? And it could be a coach, could be a mentor, could be a program, it could be an investment you made in a company. I'm just going to keep it pretty open. What are 3 or more investments, very specific ones you made, and how it became a great return from you and gave you monetary returns?
Sobriety was first. Surrendering to my brother,
good.
going to AA and NA, and getting sober, first and foremost. Second would be, I would say, the Mankind Project. It's a men's group that do a lot of Iron John kind of work, a lot of men's work, a lot of psychodrama and working on the past. That really helped me grow up as a man by being around other men doing their work. Because again, with my background, I said earlier, my role models were Garth Brooks and Cal Ripken and Tom Clancy novels. That's were my male role models. So going to a men's program and really doing my deep inner work as a man, it made me a better father. It made me a father. So that was really, really important. And then other investments was basically when I took a chance. So when I got the opportunity to get a job that terrified me. So when I was waiting tables at the Four Seasons, I had an opportunity to go into the accounting office. And the Four Seasons had never moved anybody from the restaurants into a professional job. And I talked my way into that job. And I didn't even know what a copier was at that point. I was a waiter and a bartender my whole life. When I got a job at NetApp, I talked myself into these jobs that terrified me and went every day. So that investment in myself of being willing to be terrified every day and showing up anyway is probably the biggest investment. Even getting married, right? I was terrified to get married. I don't know that I can keep this. I don't know that I'm the guy who can do this, right? And my marriage ultimately failed, but my ex-wife would say I kept my commitment to her and my family all these years, right? So
that's powerful.
So those are the 3 things.
You create a lot of video content. Even before I met you, you were creating content. Now you've accelerated the amount of videos you do on social media, posting on social media, being very active. Can you share with people what that experience was like from the beginning to where you're at now in terms of just showing up on camera and posting on social and being this social person? And also just very specific ways of how it's helped you in your business and growth.
Sure. So the first thing that got me onto creating videos and social media is I always wanted to help people, right? Even when I was a sales guy, I would do a newsletter of all kinds of good stuff that people should read and all that stuff. And I got in trouble all the time for sending all this stuff out. So when social media came, I was willing to be Oprah. I was really happy to be Oprah on Facebook and I don't even think Instagram was a thing then. Because it was non-controversial. It was love. I'm just teaching people all this beautiful stuff. The hard part for me was when it became more professional and I had to have a point of view. I had to have an opinion, and that people might have different opinions. So when I started talking about leadership, when I started talking about those kinds of things, what I actually do for a living, that was really tough. Because people are people have other opinions on how leadership be. All these questions that you ask me, what is success? There'll be 12 different answers if you ask 12 different people. I have to put my stake in the ground, to say something like, I don't believe Michael Jordan was actually successful, right? That's controversial. For me, the hardest part is to have the blowback from having an opinion and then having people have different opinions. Because again, my personality type is I want everybody to like me. Right? I just want love, kumbaya, baby. But that my business isn't going to move forward if I'm not authentic. And if I'm authentic, I'm opinionated. I've done decades worth of work, so I do have a right to speak my mind about these topics. So that was the hardest thing about showing up on video in that fashion.
So now that you have done it and you're showing up on video and posting content like a machine, can you share how it's helped you with your business, growing your business, or helping you as a person?
Yeah, I got a note from someone the other day that said, long-time listener, first-time caller. Right, he set up an appointment with me to talk about one of my programs. Long-time listener, first-time caller. And that was a light bulb of something you always talk about, right? There's people lurking and listening that I didn't realize that people are paying attention. Like I go to the supermarket and people are like, I saw that video, and it's kind of weird. Or I'll go to a family functions and people know exactly what I'm up to and what I'm doing, which is really interesting. So right now it has elevated by having a podcast, writing books, talking about what I actually do for a living on social media has elevated me in the eyes of the people who hire me, right? So they go on my social media and they want to see if I'm someone will refer me. The first thing you go is on their social media to see who this person is. So they see me talking about the things I actually do for a living. It helps.
Where you're at in your life right now in this stage, and what are you most excited about? Like right now, you're thinking out loud about your life, everything happening, your work, your family. What are you most excited about right now? And maybe there's multiple things.
Most exciting. So I've created my dream life. Like I've had my children. I've created art. I've created business. I've written books. I won. I won at life. But I turned 60 years old last year. And what I've never done, and from my report cards to when I was a kid to my whole life, is I've never felt like I've reached my potential. And I've never been able to see what I'm actually capable of. And what I'm excited about today is I think I do something really special in the world. I think I make an impact.
I agree with you.
I think I make an impact. People have told me I make a huge impact in their lives every single day. They tell me that my point of view, my programs, the things that I bring to the world really do make a difference. You've come into my life and show, what at the exact same time as I was wondering what could I do in the world. So what I'm excited about is to see what it is I can do. How many people can I impact? How big can I make this thing? It's not about the money and all that stuff. It's like, you know what? I've really done decades of work. What can I do for people on a bigger scale? And how far can I take this? And that's what I'm excited about.
Well, your answer is exactly why I love working with you, because for me, as you know, I'm very selective when I spend a lot of time with somebody, because I want to believe in them. I want to believe in what they're doing is actually making the world a better place, because I don't just want to work with a bunch of people. They pay me money, and I want it to be very impactful in many areas. Beyond you as a person, I want you to take your work and help other people. And so I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed your commitment, because I know it's not easy sometimes when you got Brennan texting you and say, hey, you need to shoot some more videos, or hey, you do this. But I'm really proud of you for just where you're going with even your online presence, your awareness, and now kind of taking things to the next level in your business. But just you as a person, I learned too, just spending time with you, And I see why you give such impactful results with your clients and help them grow, not only in their business, but also their wife, their husband, their family, their kids. They become better people. So I want to acknowledge you for that and just say congrats. And you are living a great version of your own version of success. And I want to end on, if people want to work with you, spend more time with you, read your books or anything, where can they find you? Where can they contact you? Where can they schedule a call with you? Where can they learn about hiring you as a coach? I know you're not probably taking any more coaching on right now, but you're working on some programs. Where can they find all that?
MarkJSilverman.com. Mark, the letter J, Silverman.com is everything. The podcast, you can get a free download of my book, only tens. If you want there's a bunch of free resources. That's where you can go.
So follow Mark J. Silverman. Go check out his website. Check out everything on social media. Check out his videos. Comment, like, and share. Don't be a lurker. Be that one that actually acknowledges it. And I enjoyed this interview with you. And for all of you listening, feel free to share this out. Let me know what you think about it. Reach out to me, Brandon@BrandonTAdams.com. And until next time, we'll see you later.
Thank you, Brandon.